Welcome guys to a new Pixel Peepers video. It's another Lowlight comparison, and today we face the Lowlight fan favorite Huawei Mate 20 Pro and Samsung's flagship for 2018, the Galaxy Note 9. Enjoy! Hey there guys! So we're back with the video comparison between the Mate 20 Pro and the Galaxy Note 9. On the left we have the Huawei and on the right we have the Galaxy. Front facing camera, 1080p, 30 frames per second. Both phones look pretty good, good stabilization. But I don't really like the colors on either one. Hey there guys! So we're back with the video comparison between the Mate 20 Pro and the Galaxy Note 9. On the left we have the Huawei and on the right we have the Galaxy. Front facing camera, 1080p, 30 frames per second. Both phones look pretty good, good stabilization. But I don't really like the colors on either one. Starting with 1080p front-facing video, there is not much difference between the two phones. Both are stable, both are sharp and detailed. Colors are off on both phones. Huawei leans slightly more than it should on the yellow side, while Samsung makes my skin a bit too magenta. If not for the wider field of view, I would have given it a tie, but as things are, the Note 9 fits more to the frame and that's always a good thing. Also, don't forget the Galaxy can record QHD video, so I would give the front-facing video recording to Samsung. And this is 4K, 30 frames per second. On the right the Galaxy and on the left the Huawei. Both phones are very stable. And surprisingly, I think the Mate has a much better dynamic range. Let's see the focusing. And this is 4K, 30 frames per second. On the right the Galaxy and on the left the Huawei. Both phones are very stable, and surprisingly, I think the Mate has a much better dynamic range. Let's see the focusing. .4K video is also pretty even between the two phones. Huawei stands out with a much wider dynamic range, with more details in the shadows and better controlled highlights. Samsung on the other hand has better stabilization without all the lights flickering we see on Huawei. Sharpness is on point, colors are also very well rendered. I would give it a tie here, but anyone can choose either of the phones depending on what they value first, a better dynamic range or a better stabilization. And this is 1080p, 30 frames per second. Stabilization is very good on both phones, or at least this is what I see on my phone screens. I see some frame tearing on the Mate. But the video footages look pretty good. And this is 1080p, 30 frames per second. Stabilization is very good on both phones, or at least this is what I see on my phone screens. I see some frame tearing on the Mate. But the video footages look pretty good. In 1080p, I think the Samsung pulls ahead thanks to its similar wide dynamic range as the Mate 20 Pro, but maintaining the lead in stabilization. Colors are rendered nicely, sharpness and details are top tier for 1080p video, noise is kept under control. Also, I would like to mention that besides the better stabilization the Samsung has for back camera videos, it also has a slightly higher quality sound recording thanks to the better microphones. Overall, both phones do a good job in low-light videos, but Samsung is better. Huawei did some remarkable improvements since the P20 Pro, but it was not enough to beat the best video recorder the Android world has to offer. Moving on to photo comparison, as usual we start with selfie camera. And here there is no doubt about it, Samsung has the better selfie camera for low light, no matter the shooting environment. In a well-lit situation, Note 9 manages to pull more detail with better color accuracy. The Mate is slightly softer, with a slight yellow tint to it. Exposure and dynamic range is solid on both. But moving on to a heavily backlit situation, as you saw in the previous comparison against the Sony, the Mate 20 Pro blows the highlights out of the water. Note 9 has a much better exposure with better dynamic range, but also loses detail, just like the Mate. But portrait mode in low light is naturally better on the Mate, because it uses just the main sensor. Samsung uses the telephoto sensor, and a smaller f2.4 aperture means it has to bump up the ISO value, introducing noise. Color balance is also different, Samsung being slightly too warm for my liking. Edge detection is pretty solid on both phones, but overall the Huawei does a better job here. And finally, let's check out the back camera low light performance for both phones. It is very difficult for me to choose a winner here, as both phones come with pros and cons. First, we all know that the Mate does a wonderful job when it comes to balanced exposure and dynamic range. But Samsung is putting up a good fight, especially in shadows, where it manages to pull more detail actually. Highlights are blown, just like with the Sony phones, but at least shadow detail is much better. Huawei controls the highlights extremely well, being in an entirely different league in this regard, battling the likes of Apple and Pixel. But Note 9 strikes back with very good detail and low noise. Actually, the hardware is the best there is available today. It has a 12 megapixel large sensor, OIS, and the biggest aperture of f1.5 out of all. but the software behind it, it's pretty inconsistent. You will see photos like this one where it pulls a great amount of detail with very low noise levels, being much better than the Mate. But again, there are photos where textures are softened out because of the aggressive noise reduction algorithm. Colors are okay on both phones, but actually the Note 9 took a step back from the warm output the S9 and the S8 had to offer, now delivering a more accurate white balance, in many situations being able to even outperform the Mate. So, to sum up, the battle is pretty close. Both phones are neck and neck. Huawei overall has the much better exposure and dynamic range, especially in the night mode. And this makes a huge difference when watching the pictures on a small display, or compressed on various social media platforms. It's only when you zoom close enough we actually see the Galaxy has its strong points too, being able to deliver sometimes better shadow information and overall better and more natural fine detail. Colors are also a mixed bag. Sometimes Huawei is better, but sometimes Samsung is. I must admit, if I shoot JPEG with both phones, but I am willing to post-edit those pictures in specialized software, I would be able to get better photos with a Note. And by better photos I mean more natural photos. Exposure can somehow be fixed, colors also. But that nasty processing and watercolor effect of the Mate 20 Pro cannot be fixed by any means. But then again, if I am willing to post-edit the photos I take, most probably I would be willing to shoot in RAW format with manual settings. And that means that all the nasty processing of the Mate is gone, and the full potential of the 40 megapixel sensor can be used. Samsung's additional OIS might make up for it, but we don't know that yet. I think I will do a manual shooting comparison between the two phones in low light, as they both have some of the best hardware available. But until then, I will let you watch the rest of the video. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe if you enjoyed it. Vote in the poll for your pick between the two phones, and talk to you in the comments. This is Pixel Peepers signing out.